Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. This is the show where between my guest interviews with subject matter experts and topic-specific deep dives, the aim is to arm you with actionable insights and information on how to prioritize your metabolic health and improve your overall health and well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Duplessis. My guest today is the wonderful Dr. Amy Gutman. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ricky. As we were saying, I've been looking forward to chatting with you for a long time. Thank you so much for having me on.
So, Amy, you and I have been connected through our wonderful mutual friend, the fantastic Mr. Martin Gillespie, and we've got to know each other a little bit across social media. But for the audience, I wonder if you might just give us a background, who you are, where you've come from, and your niche in the metabolic health space.
Sure. I'm an emergency physician, have been for a very long time. Grew up as a firefighter EMT and transitioned into emergency medicine. And then after I had a health crisis, sort of realized that everything I thought I knew about medicine was really quite wrong. And I'm a very curious person. I've traveled the world trying to learn about different people and different things. And when I was sort of struck by the fact that if an educated person or someone who tried to be educated could get everything wrong, what can I do to be better? And as I found out that keto and carnivore cured me of things that were, quite frankly, killing me, I'm like, how can I apply this? And not just for individuals in the emergency department, but on a bigger stage. And that's how I found myself founding my own company and meeting wonderful people like you and Martin, although, again, he's Scottish. So.
Well, we'll have to forgive him for that, but
we will, because he's a lovely gentleman otherwise. But no, it's and I consider it penance. Because, like many traditional physicians, and I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, we spend a lot of time learning the wrong things and telling our patients the wrong things, and we end up treating the result of that every single day. And when I discovered that root cause medicine or metabolic medicine is not, woo-woo science, and it's actually based very deeply in science. Hippocrates, 461 BCE, let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food.
Yep.
He was not wrong. Not wrong. So
he wasn't wrong at all.
That's what I enjoy now. I still work in the emergency department, night shifts, paying those bills. And then when I'm not, I get to meet wonderful people.
Superb. So, I am obviously not a physician. So I can't claim to have the same experience as you. And I imagine it's an interesting way you frame that, because for me, I've walked the walk that the majority of people who listen to this will either be walking or have walked themselves, where conventional mainstream advice was systematically letting me down. And I started, for me, it was in my early 30s, getting sicker and sicker and sicker in spite of exercise, in spite of eating a standard sort of Western diet, which was the recommended sort of eat well, plate type thing.
Sure.
And got to the point where my personal reason for going down keto was I was just desperate to avoid counting calories. There's nothing worse for a South African male. Nothing worse for a red-blooded South African male than having to walk away from a meal still feeling hungry. Like, I'd rather chop my leg off. Like, I want to eat to the point where I feel happy and satiated, and then that's enough and done. And so desperately, I jumped on Google and I was like, is there a way to eat that doesn't leave me hungry? And lo and behold, the world of low carb and keto came back to me, first in the form of Diet Doctor. And that was the first sort of website that I came across, because at least mindful enough not to just believe like Healthline or Men's Health or like
Sure.
the sort of tabloid type stuff. I wasn't following YouTube influencers or anything like that. I came across scientists who were talking about this thing called a ketogenic diet. I thought, whoa.
This episode is brought to you by my work as a Zinzino independent partner. To find out more about Zinzino and their pioneering work in test-based personalized nutrition and how this can help you take the guesswork out of your personal health journey, please have a look at the episode description and complete the short survey linked therein. This episode is also brought to you by my new tech startup, Biosym Technologies. At Biosym Technologies, we are creating intelligent, technology-driven solutions for human metabolic health, empowering individuals to embrace a biology-first approach to their lifestyle, health, and wellness. To keep up to date with our progress at Biosym Technologies, please look at the episode description and join our mailing list, where you will receive periodic updates on the exciting things that we have underway.
This seems like heresy. Like,
Yes.
these are the people who are meant to be like pushing the whole eat less, move more type narrative, and they weren't. And so I thought, yeah, let me give that 3 months. And yeah, the rest is history. Here we are today. And
it's interesting when you talk about the scientists, because if you look at the ketogenic literature, it's actually not traditional nutrition literature. Nutrition research, and Georgia Eade has a wonderful article on. Dr. Georgia Eade is, of course, brilliant, terribly funny, but brilliant, Harvard psychiatrist. But she talks about how bad nutrition research is, and it is. It's quite difficult and it's quite badly done. But a lot of ketogenic research is not research that the average person would like go towards. It's biochemistry and physiology. And really, you have to almost have like this like broad knowledge of organic chemistry. And it's quite difficult to read a lot of it and not obvious to the practical applications of it. And so I think the majority of people who kind of enter the world of keto or carnivore are just like you and I. We're very frustrated, like, oh my gosh, everything that I'm doing is making me worse. And how do I fix that? And they do find a YouTuber, an influencer. And I find that a little bit challenging. I'm certainly not an influencer of any sort. My abs are quite buried. I'm delightfully healthy now. But when I was very sick, I was like 92 pounds. I was emaciated. Now I'm, 125 and I'm healthy as a horse and I can climb and lift heavy things.
Yeah.
But a lot of people say, oh, this person has abs, therefore he must be healthy. And the unfortunate thing is if people don't do a deeper dive and go, well, why does it work? Why does ketogenics make sense? And I think, Vinny Totorich, not a doctor. He's very self-deprecating. He's quite brilliant. But I think his documentary, Dirty Keto, is probably one of the best examples of aha moments for people who are like for listening today going, what are these two? Oh, this is ridiculous. They just eat meat. But it's not just counting macros. It's what you're putting in your mouth.
Yeah.
And if you have incredibly nutritious food, something that satisfies everything your body is asking for, you aren't hungry. You're not shoveling stuff in your face every day that is terribly unhealthy. And, I heard it, a metaphor, and I'm so sorry I don't remember who said it because it's quite brilliant and I steal it all the time. What do people do to fatten up pigs for slaughter? They feed them seeds and oils and grains.
Yeah.
Why would you go to a grocery store and go, well, clearly this is health food that is going to help me lose weight? It is used to fatten pigs for slaughter.
Yeah, not just pigs, cattle too.
Yeah,
on the
absolutely.
Yeah, finish them off with stone.
If you can wrap your head around that, like, the dichotomy. Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Mhm.
you're absolutely
Absolutely.
right. It's insane.
And if you can overcome the dichotomy in your mind and you start to go, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. So I wonder what else doesn't make sense.
Mm.
And I think the curiosity, that's the one thing. And I have to say I have a slight addiction to Twitter. It's not
Okay.
a horrible addiction, but I like it. I like the arguments. It's like fantastic.
I
The
suffer the
arguments are lovely.
same guilty pleasure.
Oh,
LinkedIn and
absolutely.
Facebook in my circumstance.
LinkedIn is at least semi-civilized sometimes, or at least it's buried under a false front of congeniality.
Mm.
Maybe.
I like to
Twitter
play a
is,
game.
yeah.
I am not trying to convert the person that I'm arguing with. I know that's a lost cause. But for me, it's an opportunity to sharpen my arguments and the way I unpack things and the way I articulate my points, in the hopes that the sort of average Joe audience, who might be sitting on the fence and undecided one way or another, can look at it and then have their aha moment
Right.
and walk away enlightened, because I've taken the time to engage with this person who vehemently disagrees with me. And instead of getting into a sling match of calling them names and them calling me names, and instead of it degrading into a Twitter argument,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
actually making my points and trying to articulate them as eloquently as I can. So that's my little game, and it's specifically for the audience that are watching, not for the person I'm debating. Like I'm not interested in trying to convert
That's
them,
nice.
but I want to unpack the argument in such a way that anyone reading that is hopefully persuaded and comes away with a better understanding.
And it takes a big person to admit that they're wrong.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think, especially sort of in the middle of an argument, and I'm whatever politically, I'm whatever. But I think it's interesting when you see somebody like Bill Maher.
Mm-hmm.
For years, he was in the U.S. He was just very left-wing liberal. But when everything goes really quite to the right, people tend to move towards the middle. And every now and again, he'll have somebody on his show and he'll be like, you know what? I did not think about that. You are right. And I think to do it privately during a private conversation is hard enough, but to do it in front of an audience. And so you may have that person walk away who is not agreeing, but you've sharpened your argument. But that person may end up going home and go, that's tough to refute. Like when you tell people that plants are trying to kill you, and they look at you, you can't lead with that, right? That you need to have a little bit more nuanced discussion about why. Yeah, a bit with that. And I was a vegan for 37 years.
Yes.
37 years, yes. And if you had told me in the midst of my veganism, the wonders of meat, and it's actually better for animals, it kills less animals, and oh, by the way, the plants are trying to kill you, I would have, thank you so much, and here's $1, and go off and get whatever mental health treatment you want.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for it, and I didn't understand it, and it wasn't presented well. I sort of had to come to it myself. I wish there had been someone that engaged me before I had to find people to get engaged with. And in all honesty, it was, I'd gotten so desperate that I don't have a primary care doctor. Most physicians just will wait until their like bones are through their skin before they will ask for help. And I needed to get a checkup for a job, and I was terribly, terribly sick at that time. And this little resident doctor, when I went to her with this list of symptoms that to me as an emergency medicine physician were actually this horrible accumulation of things that just really pointed at, oh, dear God, this woman's dying. She's like, oh, it's just menopause. She's, my mom did that. And I'm like, do you have an adult that I can talk with? I'm like, I'm like, dear Lord, she's been out of med school for like a minute and she's dismissive.
Yeah.
She's so dismissive of her patients. Because if you had said to the average person, hey, you've had a 50-pound weight loss, which I wanted to lose 20 pounds. And then, oh, dear God, it would come on. Migraine to the point I couldn't see. I had a baseline tremor.
Wow.
That would not a good thing in the emergency department, trying to suture up people's eyelids. Like, oh, terrible rashes and heart rate things. And it was just, it was awful. I was absolutely convinced I was dying. She's like, no, you're just in menopause. Well, of course I was. It was all vasomotor symptoms because I had not had a lick of cholesterol in my body for literally my entire adult life, since age 11 or so on, 14 or so. It was magical when I looked at the physiology and went, wait a minute. All my hormones are made from cholesterol. My liver makes cholesterol. I'm not feeding my liver cholesterol.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. And it literally struck me. I went back to the physiology and went, well, of course what? What am I thinking?
Yeah.
And I don't know that the average person would come to that conclusion unless somebody like you said, hey, let me engage you. Let me explain to you why statins are bad. Let me explain to you, like, the oxalates are actually really, really bad for autoimmune disease. Let me explain to you why the death of one cow to feed an entire family for a year is better than the 40,000 animals that it takes to raise the grain on that acre. It's, if people can see it like that, I think they can be awake. Now, I don't know the environment in the UK right now. I know the farmers movement, of course, but here in the US with Robert Kennedy and his push against ultra-processed foods, it is definitely making waves. I don't know if the same waves are being made in Europe, because you already have a lot more restrictions than we have.
Yeah,
in the
to a
US.
lesser degree. I mean, the problem on this side of the pond, we definitely have a problem with ultra-processed foods. They still make up the majority of the average person's daily intake, but it's far less of an issue than what you have in the USA, unfortunately. So the difference is not quite so profound. And then
Sure.
the USA tends to lead in the sort of, how would you say, the momentum tends to start on your side of the pond and then carry across. So you'll have all the great stuff that RFK Jr. is doing, and then slowly but surely it'll trickle across to the side of the pond, and people will start to echo and start to push similar reform. So we'll lag a little bit behind, I think, but we'll catch up.
It would be nice. It would be great if we could take the politics out of it. It's really, it's a difficult thing too, because people are so, they're so, I mean, it's hard to argue.
It's heavy.
Oh my gosh. And then, it's hard to argue that, and yet the people from, there was a big thing here in the US where they had congressional testimony where people were saying that it was actually, much healthier for people to have, Coke and chips and all these things, because if we didn't subsidize these things, how would poor people eat? And people went in front of Congress with straight faces and went, well, it's certainly having a, Coke and chips and Cheerios and Honey Nut this, and it's certainly, why would we want to subsidize anything else? But you're also talking, we also won't let people buy raw milk. So,
the food system is broken. I was having a conversation. In fact, on the episode that aired today, my episode with Dr. Jerry Sims, I mentioned that I get lamb's liver at the supermarket down the road.
Nice.
But I'm in the UK, I'm in England, and the lamb's liver that I buy at the supermarket comes from New Zealand.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's flown in from New Zealand. All the lamb is flown in from New Zealand. but you travel 2 hours down the road to Wales, and there's more sheep than what there are people.
Okay,
And you just go,
why
like,
is that? I
I've got
don't.
no idea.
Oh, you
I'm yet to find
I,
anyone who can answer that question and give me a practical explanation as to why UK grown lamb and mutton is not available in UK supermarkets. You can find it at like expensive online butchers, and you're paying an absolute premium for it. It's ridiculous. But if you sit and you break that down, you just think about the cost involved and the logistics involved in raising livestock in New Zealand, which is quite literally the opposite end of the world from where I
it's
am.
no, yeah, it's definitely not anywhere.
Like if I dug directly down, I've done this on Google Earth. If
Oh,
you go straight down from where I am in Basingstoke, England, you come out just off the coast of New Zealand.
really?
So it is quite literally the opposite end of the globe.
Oh, that's fascinating.
They bring the meat across here, and it sells here cheaper than what local grown stuff sells.
It
And
makes
I
no sense.
cannot wrap my head around it.
Where is UK lamb sold if it's not? I mean, you said
Don't know.
that's fascinating.
Don't know. There must be some
So,
other country, and maybe one of the audience would like pipe up and go, "Oh, well, I'm over here, and all
oh
our
yeah.
stuff is like from Wales."
So there, one of the very interesting things that is in the US that actually I think they just had legislation to change it. So there's grown in the US, raised in the US, and then packaged in the US.
Yes.
So, and I don't know the percentage, and I'm so sorry that I don't, because I did not know about this until there's a farm called White Oak Farms. It's a wonderful regenerative farm.
Yeah.
And
I know.
I heard about them actually on Joe Rogan. Yeah. And I love listening to the owner because he's just like, it's like Georgia, it's like so, and it's wonderful. His whole family was
Yeah.
in the farm, but he
Yeah.
was talking about any meat that comes into the US that they take the packaging off of it and repackage it is now a product of the US.
Hmm.
And he said they undercut the prices. He goes, it's not that it's not good quality. He said it's fantastic quality, but it's not the US.
Hmm.
And so if it's halfway across the world for you, it's further for us, and it's still cheaper than our local farms. And I have a dealer. I joke about like on Friday nights because I work overnights. I'm like, oh, I get to see my dealer in the morning because she has the eggs,
Yeah.
she's got the meats, she's got all the local things, and I always know because my intention every Saturday morning, I'm good blinders. I'm gonna go in because she always has the good stuff, like oh, I can tuck
Mhm.
but then she'll be like, so anyway, I know you don't want it. I'm just going to show you. And she will bring out these cowboy ribeyes that I'm like, so I don't have a grill. I live in a condo. We have a grill by the pool, but it's like, I don't have a grill. And she'll
Yeah.
bring out this gorgeous local. She's like, the cow's name was Robert, and he was lovingly raised. And I'm like, how much is this going to cost me for this beautiful? And she goes, listen, it's not how much it's going to cost you. It's going to taste fabulous. It's going to feed you for a week. And I'm like, here, just take my money because I can't not. It is so
Oh, brilliant.
and she's right because you can't eat all of it at once.
Mm.
But I eat once a day. Well, I bet if I tried.
I eat once a day, but I'm
Yeah.
100 kilos, so I can get through a decent
But
plate.
you're also
of
not
food.
5'1", and we have a
I'm
little bit different
5'7", so
metabolism.
I'm
Well,
not
there you
that
go.
tall.
But it's okay. I mean, the thing is, people equate carnivore to skinny minis with abs.
No.
And it's not. We're quite healthy people.
I mean, I
People
have
lose a lot.
abs, but
Well, yes.
there's a little bit of padding
Theory.
along with them.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Keeps you warm. But the thing about carnivore and the thing about keto is what we have is like, this is sort of ideal. People look differently, of course, and people lose a lot of weight on it because when you stop eating we call this, standard American diet, the SAD diet, you call it standard Western diet, and you are not inflamed all the time.
Yeah.
And your kidneys are working, your heart is working, and you're processing fluids much better. And the fat that you have is healthy fat. It is not, coating your organs. There's a difference between, of course, visceral fat and organ fat. And we're very metabolically active. There is a big difference. No, we're not skinny minis. We're really, really quite healthy. People are just built differently. And for me, I will come home in the morning after work, love the ground beef, have some eggs, have some bacon. And it is not uncommon that I'm just like, well, I give it to my husband. I'm like, you finish. And it's not because it's not wonderful. It's just, I can't finish because you're so full. I rarely snack. Every now and again at work, I'll be like, I like, if we have like something, like if I have to put somebody's hip back in, it is like requires an awful lot of exercise. There's physics, but you get some real good sweat. And I'm like, I might have a piece of cheese, but your body is given what it is. And when you have really, really good, healthy food and really quality eggs that they're red and beautiful, and you have your macronutrients and your micronutrients, and even better than that, when you intake that cholesterol, as you know, it makes you feel so much better. You're healing, it's reparative. And I would love to say it helps you sleep, but I have the world's worst sleep cycle, and I've yet to find anything because I work at night and then I run a business during the day and occasionally sleep. Actually, I'm curious. What are your thoughts on CGMs, continuous glucose monitors? I'm curious about that in regards to like sleep cycles and things.
This is actually interesting. So,
because I know you're a tech guy.
Well, I work in mobile telecoms as my day job, and I work sort of on the cutting edge of it, where the teams I manage introduce all the latest gadgets and equipment and features and functions and stuff like that. So I work in testbed and live trials, and then onboarding stuff, and then getting it ready for what we call business as usual, which then rolls out across the network and gives the end user the benefit. And one of the key principles that I've learned with regard to testing, and it's universal across any testing, is that you need a massive data sample to cut through the noise and actually identify the trends. And so my problem with blood tests in general is a single blood test at random sporadic times through a year, if you're getting one a year, is a snapshot of one particular moment in time. It tells you nothing about the overall trends and stuff. And people sort of have a blood test this year, and then they won't have one next year, and then they might have two the following year. And then they want to try and draw trends and understand what's going on with themselves there. It's noise. It's nonsense. You can't understand anything. Where continuous glucose monitors, where you have that constant feed of data, that's brilliant for understanding actual trends and getting rid of the noise and figuring out what's going on with yourself. So I love them from that perspective. Absolutely love them. I think
there's a but.
yeah. I don't. I'd like to think that we get to the point where it's a little bit less intrusive.
Yeah.
But I think it'll take a while for the technology to sort of catch on. It's definitely improving. So far as how they interact with sleep, I'm not really all that sure, to be honest.
To me, I found it so about 4 months ago, I started randomly to put on a bit of weight. And I since starting carnivore, I came down from when I could barely stand up. I was not healthy. And I finally sort of found my little happy little zone.
Mhm.
And then same food, I walk every day, I exercise every day, do weights. And I'm like, I am gaining weight. I'm like, this is the oddest thing. And I started to feel a bit achy and unwell. And that was right around the time when my business was sort of kicking up.
Yeah.
And so my very bad sleep schedule went into
Worse.
like worse, right? I would come home, I'd work for 2 hours, sleep for an hour and a half, have a meeting, sleep for an hour. And I'm like, I just feel unwell. So I found that I couldn't get into ketosis anymore without exogenous ketones at all. I'm like, well, cortisol has all these random things. I bet you my cortisol is just completely out of whack. In fact, I have no doubt. But there's no continuous cortisol monitor, certainly not one that I can slap on my arm. So I ended up getting a CGM, because you can get them online. And I slapped it on my arm, which, by the way, you talk about intrusive. I mean, I don't know what your home life is like. I'm assuming you don't wear a bra. For those of us who are bra wearers, I am reminded of the fact that I have a CGM every time I take my bra on and off, because it catches on. I'm like, I have one on now because my husband is now committed to carnivore.
Okay. Nice.
Yes, he's been sort of carnivore light, dirty carnivore. And then actually, it's interesting. As a side note, we had our 20th anniversary and he loves lighthouses. And he's like, oh, let's climb the lighthouse. And it's about like 35, 36 degrees here, right?
Yeah.
And he got like 12 steps in, and he's a very large man. And he's like, well, I'm going to die. I'm like, there is a very good possibility. So he said, next year for our anniversary, I'm climbing the lighthouse. Cool.
Okay.
He goes, I'm doing it. I'm going to give up the soda, because he was like dirty. So I said, let's get CGMs. Let's do it. But my sleep cycle this week was so disordered. So I've been tracking my cortisol, and I find about every 90 minutes or so during my night, which is day, my sugar goes from, because I usually hang around 70, 75, sometimes a little bit lower, 50, like when I'm sleeping, zing, 120. Boom. And it will zing up, hang there for about an hour, and then slowly come back down. And then about 90 minutes later, right back up. And I'm like, this is why I'm gaining weight. My cortisol is out of control.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting thing, because it's not a data point, because a data point would have been 75 or 120.
Yeah.
Neither would have given me any information whatsoever. But you can tell you what, when you integrate that into your latest metabolic health model, you feel free to write me a check for that one.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. You feel free to.
Well, I must be honest. I'm a Billy Basics kind of guy. I've got an engineer who I work with, Billy, and his favorite thing is Billy Basics. Like, highly intelligent human being, but he likes to keep things as simple as possible. And so I've adopted
As they
Billy
should
Basics.
be.
And
they should be.
I'd like to bring everything back to fundamental human physiology.
Yes.
And so I think you'll agree that your shift work patterns are not conducive to circadian biology and the way that the suprachiasmatic nucleus is trying to run your body. And so, it stands to reason that over time that will interfere with things heavily.
Absolutely.
So I guess a good question would be, where do you see it going? Do you continue with the shift work and the night work long term? Have you got a plan to get away from that, to get yourself more aligned with normal circadian rhythms? Like, from a personal perspective, what's your sort of thoughts and end goal around that?
So I started working in the fire department when I was 15. I grew up in a fire department.
Yep.
And since I've been 15 years old, I just turned 53 this past week. I have, with the exception of 1 year in my life, and it was actually 8 months, I've always worked either shift work or night shifts. I have never worked a normal job. And that 1 year is when we actually moved back into the country to get my son sort of settled. I took a day job, and I was really disturbed by how cheerful people were during the day. I'm like, everyone smiles and they're so happy. It's so strange. I don't really take, and I don't, I would love to say I'm used to it, but I'm certainly not. I think it's definitely harder when you get older. I think the stress of starting a business, whether you're internalizing it or not, actually, you'll think this is funny because I know you are a man who loves grounding. I love grounding as well. I sustained one of my many head injuries in my life, grounding, because one of our nurses was swearing by this new grounding she got for her bed. She worked night shifts as well. She's like, it's amazing. She goes, because so Florida has a lot of things that will bite you and kill you in the grass. You do have to be careful walking the grass. And it's just, there are lots of things that bite. So walking outside sometimes is difficult. So she said, I love my grounding sheet. You'll love it. It's fantastic. Cool. So I sleep actually in a closet. We've converted a closet into my little bedroom because I close the door. I put
dark,
noise. Yeah, I keep it dark. I put tiles in to keep it. It's really lovely. I have a fan going. So I got this grounding sheet and I put it on my bed, but I only have like 2 plugs in the room. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to plug it into this plug, and checked it. I'm like, oh, this is lovely. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, do I feel anything? And of course, that's not how it works, right? And I sleep apparently like an octopus. And so I found myself probably about an hour and a half later, on the floor bleeding because I had gotten my legs caught in it and managed to roll over and whack my head on the little dresser that I have in there, the one sharp edge. So I almost killed myself with my grounding sheet. And I will tell you, it did not improve my general mood. It did not help with settling out anything. It caused I'm like, well, I'm going to have to get stitches now.
Oh dear.
But yeah, so I was injured by my grounding pad. So that was my attempt to even out my sleep, and it was a big solid fail.
On the plus side, it sounds like you weren't conscious for the event and therefore didn't feel it happen. And I say that because I can't remember how old I was. At some point as a youngster, we went away. We were away for the weekend in the Kruger National Park, which is South Africa's biggest national park. And I remember going to sleep on the top bunk. And the next morning, I woke up on the floor on a mattress next to my mom and dad's bed, with a very sore back. And at some point during the night, I'd rolled and fallen out of the double bunk and hit the fridge on the way down. But I don't remember hitting the fridge. I just woke up with a sore back on the floor.
So there are things that emergency room physicians, you'll never see them do or their families do. You will never see an emergency room phisian who has bunk beds in their home.
Yeah.
You just won't. It's just no. And we don't clean grills with wire bristles because we take them out of people's throats. And
I've seen that.
It's horrific. It's a horrific injury.
Yeah.
We look in our cups before we take a sip because it's amazing what people. There's the list of things we sometimes at night, if we're feeling fairly silly, we're like, okay, what is the weirdest complaint we'll run through these different things, but yeah, bunk beds. I won't say it happens on a weekly basis. But so in Orlando, there's a lot of camps down here, and then a lot of the resorts like Disney and things. Particularly, they have some place called Fort Wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the big hotels, and it's all bunk beds, and it's just a horror show. But yeah, it's the things we don't do as a physician. It is funny though how many physicians drink and smoke. I find that very funny.
It is true.
I find it funny how many physicians are overweight, how many physicians don't exercise. it's really intriguing to me because I know very few slim cardiologists, which I think is an interesting statement.
Well, I think you sort of, I can, playing devil's advocate to a degree, you can understand how the lifestyle around the work does not lend itself well to metabolic health, and therefore it can sort of be rationalized, and a person can justify it to themselves and try and explain it away. That's not that it doesn't make it okay, but I can easily see how if I was Dr. So and so and I was working shift patterns and crazy hours, and it's just not conducive with looking after my own health very well, I would rationalize it away as, well, it's part of the job and I'm doing the service for others. And as long as I'm advocating the right thing to my patients, then it doesn't really matter what's happening in my own life. That doesn't make it okay, but you can you can see how that plays out.
You can, and again, not as a skinny mini, which I'm not. It's interesting. I've actually lost more than one job because I haven't looked like, well, we've had doctors talking about health and, they're size 2 or they have, beautiful long hair and different things. But it's an interesting thing. When you think about metabolic health, to me, metabolic health is all about sort of biologic survivability.
Yeah. Right.
And if you think about the carnivore diet or an ancestral diet, it's what people have been eating for thousands of years.
Yes.
There's a reason that our bodies crave that. It's cellular adaptability. It is the fact that you can feed it something really quite healthy and your body can take it and go, well, I can do anything with this. If you take somebody who should be like the bastion of health, and you say, what did you have for breakfast today? And for me, it used to be a couple of Diet Cokes. I was addicted. Oh my gosh, I would literally have 8 to 10 Diet Cokes or Diet Pepsis. But I would have Diet Cokes or Diet Pepsis, waffles, because I loved bread, or cereal with almond milk. And then I would dump a big whole thing of like fruit on top.
Okay.
And that would be breakfast because that was healthy. When I worked in the fire department, we smoked. Everybody in the fire department smoked. We'd go to a cardiac arrest for somebody who was on oxygen, wasted away from COPD, emphysema. We'd work the cardiac arrest. They would, we often didn't get them back. And the first thing we had all do when we go outside is you'd light up.
Yeah.
And if I was a patient, I would be horrified. But that's what a lot of physicians do. That's what they do to de-stress.
Yeah.
For me, my de-stressing is walking. I want my body to be as biologically, absolutely. I want it to be as biologically active as it can be. Sometimes I'll do my email or do the phone. It's a way of just moving. It's movement. Movement is medicine, 100%. And I can tell you I am in better shape at 53 because of the diet changes I've made and the exercise that I've committed to. It doesn't take a lot. 30 minutes a day of just something light, and it energizes your entire system. It cuts down your risk of dying. It cuts down your risk of cancer. It cuts down your risk of GI illness. It cuts down your risk of diabetes. 30 minutes a day of walking. Who can't commit to that? Yeah, and yet a lot of us don't. It makes me sad. It makes me sad.
Yeah.
But, the more people there are like you, and the more people there are that me that are like shouting at the heavens angrily, like an angry man, like, I'm hoping that people out there, like, let me ask you this. If you had somebody who you knew was going to tune into your show for 1 minute,
Yeah.
60 seconds, what would your one-liner be to that person who's like, they're on the fence, like, oh, it still sounds silly. And I don't understand how eating meat can save my life. It's because it's more than eating meat, right?
Yeah.
What would you
Yeah,
say
for
to
sure.
that person and say, listen, this is how being metabolically healthy will save your life? What would you say to that person?
So my very short elevator pitch to that person would be, your metabolic health underpins everything, physical and mental, that makes you you. It is literally the foundation of you. If it's out of whack, you're out of whack. The best way to look after your metabolic health is to realign your lifestyle with the evolutionarily consistent lifestyle factors that human beings have had for eons. Those are a species appropriate diet, regular physical movement, circadian aligned sleep, circadian aligned light exposure, and regular contact with the earth. That's it. Start where you want, but start realigning your lifestyle with those 5 things, and you'll see the needle shift like you won't believe.
Brilliant. It's a wonderful elevator pitch. And it covers all those important factors. Well, yes.
Yeah.
But, and you know what? It's what I say, it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not easy. And I think I started off in 2018, and diet was my inroad into this whole space, because that's where I needed the intervention. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I think nutrition is the gateway to metabolic health awareness. But
because I would actually think it would be exercise.
I think exercise is widely accepted already, and perhaps it's the bias of the upbringing that I had, because I've always been active. I've never questioned whether exercise was important or not. It's just always been, yeah, you need to exercise.
Gotcha.
You've got to exercise. It's always been part and parcel of life. But I started getting very metabolically unhealthy in spite of my exercise. And so for me, diet was the big thing. Like, diet was the first time where the conventional advice didn't match up to the reality of what's actually required. And so, like, nutrition was the big one that moved for me. And then for me, that's the logical entry point for most people, because it's the biggest thing where the conventional mainstream view doesn't match the reality of what we need.
That it is to know. I agree. I guess, what is the expression? You can't outrun a bad diet, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
To me, it's an interesting thing, because I see the opposite. I can 100% see where you're coming from, but I see people who are trying to out exercise a bad diet, and because they fail at that, that's what leads them to reevaluate what they're eating. They're like, I am going crazy at the gym. I'm running a marathon. I'm lifting weights. I cannot lose weight. Well, what are you eating? And so I see it a little bit differently, but maybe those are my experiences. My patients. So the fact is, every podcast I think I've ever given, 85% of my patients I see in the emergency department every night have chronic illness.
Yeah.
And about once or twice a week, I get through to one of the patients.
Okay.
About once or twice a week. And the way that I leverage into them, I'm like, you want to control your blood sugar, and I get it. You don't want to diet. It's like, sure, all you have to do is not eat carbs. And they look at you like you've grown a second head.
Yes.
I said, you know what? You have your little monitor on, because they have their continuous monitors on. go eat your regular meal and go for a walk for 30 minutes and see what happens to your sugar. I said, if you like what happened to your sugar, I said, I want you to do that after every meal.
Yeah.
Don't change your lifestyle. Fine. That's fine. And it's, to me, the patients who I will then see, because I will see these patients again and again and again, that's their entry point. They're like, it made a difference. Oh my gosh, it dropped my blood sugar like 30, 40 points. And when you can do that integration of all those things in your life, your diet, your movement, your sleep, your grounding, people, it's inevitable that you become healthy.
Yeah.
It's almost inevitable. It really doesn't become work. How hard is it for you every day to get up and live a metabolically healthy life? Is it hard?
Yes and no.
Oh, interesting.
And I'll qualify this. So
Please.
I work a completely sedentary day job. I'm married with young kids.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter's 10. My son turns 4 on Saturday. My son
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, my son is autistic, so he's very hands-on and needs constant supervision. And we live in the UK, and we don't have immediate family involved in and around with us. So it's my wife and I who have full responsibility over the kids, and you don't sort of have the community that we grew up in, where grandparents and aunts and uncles and everyone get involved. So the trappings and stresses of modern life make it difficult to live a metabolically healthy lifestyle, because there's every reason and every excuse under the sun to be sedentary, to eat for comfort, because I'm looking for a bit of dopamine to make me feel better in the moment, and so on and so forth. So I fall into all the trappings of what I would call the dad bod trap. And I should be massively overweight, and I should be struggling with a bad back and all the things that I had in my early 30s. But I turned 40 in August, and I've never been stronger. I've never been more fit. I've never been healthier. And it's because over the last, well, it was 2018. And so over the last like 8 years, I have step by step become absolutely enthralled in metabolic health and trying to figure out how it works and why it works, and started to build the conceptualization I've come up with is that human metabolic health is a complex jigsaw puzzle, and there's many different pieces, and the more pieces that you can get in place, the more you start to see improvement. And that conceptualization comes off the back of, I fell into the online tribal sort of way of thinking initially. And it was all about the keto diet. Like the keto diet was the cure for everything, and it was going to do everything, and it was responsible for all the good in the world. But then I was faced with the reality that people are having similar health benefit outcomes with different interventions. Some people are doing cold exposure, some people are doing breath work, some people are doing more exercise. And the wrestle that I had was, it can't all be nutrition. If people are doing non-nutrition interventions and having very similar changes to their health, it must be a little bit more complicated than that. So stepping back and admitting to myself, like, yes, okay, it's not all nutrition. I need to get off that bandwagon. Like, yes, nutrition is important, 100%, but there's more involved here. And I started to look into it a bit more, and I like to understand mechanisms. So for me, it was, okay, let's have a look at a particular lifestyle factor or a thing that you're doing, and let's see, if you do that thing, what pathways, what mechanisms is it activating in the body that is causing the positive outcomes? And when you start to map that out, you start to see that certain pathways are triggered and modulated by very different activities. And that's how I boiled things down to my 5 pillars of metabolic health, which are our ancestrally appropriate lifestyle factors, because they've been with us since time immemorial. And they're
Yes.
so closely interrelated in how they impact our body and physiology, and how they trigger the different cascades of hormones and so on and so forth, that if you got your nutrition right, it's doing similar things to if you get your light exposure correct, and if you're getting your sleep correct and your exercise correct. And when you're looking after one, you're improving the others, because suddenly if you're eating right, you're sleeping better. And if you're
It's very intentional. And that's, I think it has to be. And when you look at it that way, if you're looking at things intentionally, not just, oh, I'm just going to eat meat and therefore it works. There's no thinking about it. It may, and that's cool, but you got to dig a little deeper. And you know what? Not everyone has to. That's fine. I like the fact that sometimes you don't necessarily, there are a lot of people who don't question it. It's like, I do this and it works and I'm very happy. Excellent. Cool. What do you do when it stops working?
Yes.
How do you fix yourself out of that hole? But if you're very intentional like that and go, okay, these 10 things all cause the same outcome or set a pathway in motion. What do all those things have in common? And I think it does a lot come down to, for me, it's all about the mitochondria, the sexiest organelle in the body. To me, it's all about the mitochondria. And because ultimately, if you can make everything work on a cellular level better, which is simplifying it, of course, but if you can make your mitochondria work better, what you learned in 5th grade, it is the powerhouse of the cell. It's crazy that it is. But it's also it's got an intelligence that we never thought that it had. They form partnerships and relationships, and they instinctively seek out cells that are bad. But what makes the mitochondria work could be grounding and circadian rhythm and cold plunges and saunas. And you say, well, why does cold work as well as sauna? Well, they don't work as well or equally. They work differently, but maybe they trigger the same mechanism. And there's this wonderful inflammatory marker called mTOR. I'm going to mangle this. It's mammalian something rapamycin. I'm definitely going to mangle it in my post-night shift brain. But and please understand, not only I had like an undergraduate degree in biology, I had a grad degree, I went to PA and med school, multiple fellowships. I had not heard about mTOR until I was putting together a presentation on ketogenics. I'm like, what is this? I've literally never heard about it. And it's a unique inflammatory marker that, oh, by the way, it also does things like incite cancer and incite rapid cellular growth, but in a really terrible way. And it's one of these things that it decreases your BDNF in your brain. It has all these things. But if you have your mitochondria, which take care of your protein, and it makes your mTOR work better, guess what? You don't start to develop those cancers. You don't start to develop your Alzheimer's and things like that, which it's crazy when you say, how can one thing that you can't even see, you can't lay eyes on, it doesn't, for the average person, they can't even conceptualize something that on that level can cause metabolic chaos, but it can. And so to me, it has to be intentional. It can't just be diet. It can't just be exercise. And I think we have these temptations to life around us. I miss bread. Bread was my thing. I could literally eat an entire loaf of sourdough bread with margarine, dear God. I never had a piece of butter until I became carnivore, keto. I never had a piece of butter, ever. I grew up on margarine because it was so much healthier, right? Right?
We had margarine growing up, but only because in South Africa, you had to keep the stuff in the fridge because it would just turn into liquid.
Oh, yeah.
because like it was hot.
Yeah.
And so butter kept in the fridge was rock solid, and you couldn't spread it on anything.
Oh, you
But
couldn't spread
margarine
it.
was convenient because you could spread it, and so we had margarine growing up. It was just the thing. Now we know
It's awful.
better, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah. It's awful. But if so bread is my trigger, but as hard as it is to not have it, I know if I have it, I'm so dialed in with my diet at this point. I know literally just 2 or 3 pieces of bread or just like even bites sometimes, whether it's psychosomatic or not, and it may actually be, and that's fine. I get sick. And to
yeah,
me, it's not worth it. It's really easy for me to go, no,
yeah.
that's fine.
Well,
That's
I struggled for years with lower back pain, like debilitating chronic lower back pain, and I thought back then that this was injuries from my teen years, early 20 years, where I hadn't observed proper manual handling and all that sort of jazz,
sure.
physical jobs and blah, blah, blah. I thought, okay, I didn't look after my back, and this is how the chickens come home to roost, and now I have back pain. And it got to the point where it was so bad that first thing in the mornings, I couldn't reach my feet, so I couldn't put socks on. I couldn't bend forward.
Really?
That sore. And over the course of the morning, it would sort of ease up, and eventually I'd be able to get dressed properly. But it meant I needed a couple of hours between getting up and then sort of getting
Like an 80-year-old man. Like an 80-year-old man.
And so I went through the process on the NHS. I went to the doctor, got a referral to the physio, did a bunch of exercises and stuff. That did no improvements. I got a referral to the orthopedic surgeon, got scans, went for steroid injections. They didn't help. I mean, that lasted for less than 24 hours. And I remember sitting in the surgeon's office, and a big fat guy. I won't mention his name because I don't want to go down that road, but I remember sitting across the table from him and looking at him. And in my mind, this was in 2019. So I was just over a year into my low carb journey, and I'd lost a bunch of weight, and I hadn't put together what I put together that day beforehand. But I remember sitting, looking at him and thinking to myself, like, you don't practice what you preach, buddy. Like you're
Right.
massively obese, man. But you're my orthopedic surgeon, and like something's just off. And so I'm glad. It sounds horrible, but I'm glad I was sat there thinking that, because it put me in the frame of mind where I wanted to question everything he said, because I didn't have trust in him.
Good for
And
you.
I'm glad that I did, because he sat there and told me that I had idiopathic mechanical lower back pain. And I was like, what does that mean? And he goes, well, you don't have any injuries. There's no structural damage, but you just have pain in the lower back. And over time, your joints will fuse naturally. And then you won't have any pain anymore because those joints will be fused. And I was like, okay, can you show me my scans? Because I'm in debilitating pain all the time, like especially first thing in the mornings. Like there has to be something wrong. Like I don't believe that there's nothing wrong. And so he brings up the scans, and we start going through them. There's a CT scan, so you get all the little layers. And as he's flicking through, the lower lumbar spine and the facet joints light up like Christmas. Right? It's just all sorts of colors. And I'm like, what are the colors? Like you've just told me that there's no injury. So what are the colors? And he says, oh, it's a bit of inflammation around the facet joints. But if you look at it, there's structurally, there's no damage. And then the light went off in my head.
Light bulb.
And I was like, inflammation. And then it clicked. When I'd done a few extended fasts before, around 48 to 72 hours into an extended fast, the pain had gone away completely. Like I could bend down, touch my toes, carry on. Like it was amazing. Like there was no issue.
And you hadn't made the connection.
I hadn't made this connection. And then when I ate, the pain came back with vengeance. I thought it was all digestive. Like I thought I was having indigestion and I was causing issues. But then it struck me that something in my diet, even then, even on low carb, something in my diet was causing an autoimmune response causing inflammation. And for whatever reason, that is where it was manifesting. It was on the facet joints of my lower lumbar spine. No idea why that's where it was. But as soon as I eliminated food, and then by default eliminated whatever the offending thing was,
Sure.
it was gone. So, okay. And I started a process of elimination. And so bread was already something I'd gotten rid of, but I'd noticed that if and when I do eat bread, like if I go to a friend's house or something and they offer up whatever, I eat whatever I'm given, as long as it's not vegan. Like that's I feel really
It's a hard no.
Yeah. There must be at least something animal there. So I'll eat what I'm given. I try not to be a pain in the ass too much. But if I eat bread, I know I'm going to be sore the next day. Like I know what I'm in for.
Isn't that interesting?
And other cruciferous vegetables as well, like broccolis and cabbage and stuff like that, does that to me. So I think my theory, I've not been tested for it or anything like that, but my theory is that maybe oxalates cause an autoimmune response, cause inflammation, and therefore the pain. And as long as I keep that minimal or completely eliminated, I have no back issues. And I can lift heavy and I can move.
I have heard that from so many people. I've experienced it myself with the back. It's funny though. So my husband, I always know when he's cheating on his diet, he has psoriasis. And I know he's cheating on his diet because I'm like, look at your elbows. What did you have for lunch? He's like, damn it. Because it's like, it's Florida. It's not like he's going to be wearing long sleeves, right? Yeah. Actually, so he's been really strict carnivore since 18th, since our anniversary, because he's like, all right, I'm doing it. I'm giving up soda. I'm going. We've actually done an egg and raw fast this week, just pure elimination.
Yeah.
And just, one meal a day. And it took about 3 days. His psoriasis is almost cleared up. And he was literally a rash from head to toe. And it's really, really quick. I had the same experience with my back injections. Horrible. Like I would drag my leg around the emergency department. Said, you can't give up work. And I thought initially that my back pain was gone because I had lost weight. And it made sense to me, but then it didn't make sense. I'm like, well, okay, you lose weight and there's less pressure, on the lumbar area. But if there's something structurally wrong, it shouldn't go away altogether.
Yeah. And
when I gave up carbs altogether, but it was also fruits and vegetables. And I lived on, I would eat 2 or 3 tins of blueberries when I came back to the States a day. So in Bermuda, I do. Yeah. I haven't had a blueberry for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in November.
Nice.
I miss them. It was actually the only time I cried during COVID, other than there were a few, there were many times losing patients that it was just awful and it was terrifying. And actually it was in menopause, it was really fun. We had to wear the level A's and everyone knew it. I had a hot flash because all of a sudden I started bumping in the walls because my whole shield would fog up. And so I had to put like a washcloth right on my forehead so I could rub my head against the wall and clear my shield, because I'm like, well, now I'm stuck in level A and I can't see anything because I'm fogged in.
Yeah.
But it was really, really interesting. It was my birthday and my family was separated. We were separated in COVID because they couldn't come to Bermuda. They were supposed to move here, and I moved to Bermuda 2 weeks before COVID. And so everything was restricted food-wise, as it is on an island. And I'd gotten a tin of blueberries, a little tiny tin of blueberries. And it was about $15, $17. And I tripped on the way home. And I into the streets. And Bermuda's lovely. It's not, the streets aren't clean enough to eat off of. And there were like 4 blueberries left in this tin. And I was sitting there crying on the sidewalk, eating just my little blueberries. It was very, very sad. So I do miss blueberries a lot, but not so much that I eat them now. But I think the elimination it's so helpful for people. The fasting it's a superpower. It's our body's superpower, I think, because if you said, oh my gosh, you can heal X, Y, and Z. You just have to fast. People look at you like, oh my God, I'm going to starve, but you're not. I
Yeah.
promise you are not going to
You will
starve.
last for a couple months at least.
I promise. Yes. I'm not saying don't drink water. I'm not, you just,
Yeah.
and the miraculous changes that you can have in your body. And I love the little models where they track it out. Like, okay, at 24 hours, this happens. At 72 hours seems to be like the magic zone. That is the magic zone for most people. And I think you notice that as well, because you're like, oh, okay, I can put my socks on. And that's when really the mitochondria are just scavenging. And it is truly magical. And it's really interesting if you do blood work on people who are metabolically unhealthy and you put them on a 72-hour fast. The difference between time 0 and 72 hours is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And these are metabolically unwell people.
Yeah.
And so if you think about doing that, 20 hours a day or whatever people, for me, it's about 23 hours. I come home, I cook, I eat, and then like every now and again, I'll have a snack during the evening, but a snack is a piece of cheese or, I call it dessert cheese. I have a nice Parmesan or a hard cheese. Actually, all the cheese I eat is from England or Scotland. I should say the UK if I'm being proper. Am I being proper?
Yeah.
If I say the UK?
Yeah.
It's so much better. And I like the raw cheeses and really can't get them here. I was in Wisconsin last month speaking, and I felt terrible because it was like, do you like the cheese? I'm like, it's good.
It's okay.
It's great. I didn't want to be thrown out of the state. I just felt like everyone's like, it's the best cheese ever. It's good. It's, cheese. I'm like, but it's not cheese.
Nice.
But no, it's wonderful. And I'm glad that what you took. I hate that my journey, my truth, I don't like it, but I'm glad that your journey into this has not only changed your life, but think of all the changes people listening to your program. You are huge on LinkedIn, whether you politely start fights or not, or end them. I think that's fantastic. I love that.
Guilty pleasure.
It's a wonderful. I'm going to have to look more carefully now because now I love it when people are like subtly winning arguments. I think that's fantastic. And then with your company, I think the things that you are doing are going to be so big to spread the word that I think the changes that you're going to make are going to be beyond that one person who did this, one person did that. I think you're part of a really large movement, and it's such a pleasure talking to you in person because you are just so lovely in the LinkedIn community. Thank you for not starting any arguments with me.
No.
We should argue about something.
Oh, I'm sure
I won't let you win.
We can find something to have discourse over.
Let me ask you, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I do enjoy Star Trek, don't get me wrong, but it can't hold a candle to Star Wars.
Such a smart man, and yet
But if I'm completely honest, Lord of the Rings every day of the week, twice on Sundays.
Stargate over Lord of the Rings.
No.
Oh, absolutely.
No. I'm afraid
Tolkien's
grave now.
No, I'm not a Tolkien fan.
No, but I'm a big fantasy.
Are you?
I suppose the whole space genre is fantasy too, but
yeah,
I'm more of the how would you phrase it? The magic based, like elves, fairies, goblins, dragons, demons, blah blah blah. Like that appeals to me way more than space does.
Okay. I'm a space girl. I don't love the fact that living in Orlando, I cannot see the ocean. I do love the fact that I can see rockets launch almost every week.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that is, It's the only job that I've ever been sad that I've been unqualified for. Because back in the day, when I got a letter to apply to NASA as a physician astronaut, I was very excited. The one problem was I'm 5'1". And at the time, they did not have customizable suits. You had to be 5'2" because you had to fit the suit. It's the only job I've ever been sad. Yeah, I just missed it.
Oh, dear.
I have my letter.
But on the plus side, for your health, that is.
Yes.
Zero gravity, the human physiology does not enjoy that.
No.
Like the rapid aging that induces it's actually quite mind-boggling.
Honestly, I think that's going to be the biggest problem in space travel. Let people, like all the engineers and all the brilliant minds, obviously it's not an easy thing to get a rocket from, point A to point B and then set up, but it's the physiologic changes that I'm not sure if it can be overcome, because there's a brilliant article in one of the sort of random physics journals, and it was talking about literally we're going to have a generation or so raised in space before we can even think about putting those people onto some sort of transport to wherever they're going, because they cannot have Earth-based physiology. And I thought that was a really interesting argument, in that you have to intrinsically change the way that we work by having somebody never experience earthbound living.
Yeah, you either need to find ways to mimic. I would say the gravity and the light are the two biggest ones. So you either need to perfectly mimic that in the non-Earth environment, and I don't think a generation is anywhere near enough. I think if anything, it's thousands of years, hundreds of generations before the body starts to adapt positively to that kind of change. The initial response is going to be negative, and health is going to fall off a cliff. And if you're fortunate enough to survive it, it's going to take a very long time for evolution to figure out the changes necessary to adapt positively to that environment.
It's going to be definitely, I think, the rate limiting step in that thing.
Yeah,
it would be no, and of course, this has absolutely nothing to do with animal-based diets or carnivore or anything, but I think it's really, really interesting what they're going to feed these people as well, because the metabolism it deranges the cells horrifically. You could probably make the argument that we were never supposed to explore beyond. I don't think we were either, but yet, can we not? Humans are curious. We love to travel.
I think we're curious and we love to travel, but it's going to take some major technological advancements that exactly mimic the environment our cells need. I think that's the only viable route forward. I don't think it's viable to suggest that human physiology can be changed to suit a space environment. Not in the short term, anyway. But yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Space cows for the carnivore.
Space cows.
Well, do you think they'll still get their lamb from New Zealand? It'll probably be cheaper.
Yeah, New Zealand's probably closer to them than what I am. It's funny. We'll just give me 1 second quickly, because on that topic, I posted about this recently just to demonstrate the absurdity of the UK food system. So, yeah, we've got Italian prosciutto
crudo. Oh, Sainsbury. Yeah. Made using pork from... Oh. Huh.
Made using pork from the Netherlands. And then on the back...
From Netherlands.
Everything's a bit small, but it's exclusively for Sainsbury's, which is a UK supermarket. So you've got
Italian
Dutch pork shipped to Italy to make an Italian product It is exclusively sold in the UK.
In the UK. And Bermuda. Sainsbury's is in Bermuda as well.
Okay, well, there we go. But
there we go. But that's fantastically funny.
The brokenness of the food system is something else. So
the carbon footprint of what you have in your hand, and I think it's hysterical how people like the carbon footprint, and it's wrapped in plastic, which is of course unhealthy. Is it a styrofoam base as well, or some sort of plastic base?
No styrofoam.
Oh, thank goodness.
Just hard, just plastic. But
just,
I mean, and that's not limited to just the meat products either. I mean, the vegetables and stuff are the same. You go and you walk through like the fruit or vegetable aisle, and everything comes from somewhere far, far away.
Right. Absolutely.
Like we're so far removed from local grown seasonal food. It's frightening. It's frightening,
and so we have a local farmer market where my dealer is, and we have one of the farm stands sells, it's not a farm, it sells lots of wonderful fruits and vegetables, but they're all from somewhere else. And you look, it's like the strawberries are from, I think these past strawberries from like Dominican Republic or something like that. It's not strawberry season. And yes, there's lots of farms, but farm fresh vegetables don't look great.
No.
They don't, especially so vegetables. Again, I'm pretty convinced that vegetables are out to kill us, but that's an unpopular view from some.
So I mean, all survival food. Of
course,
that's what they were. They were what you defaulted to when the hunt was unsuccessful.
Yes,
and you needed to avoid starvation.
Well, Paul Saladino, before he went a little bit off the deep end, and now he has abs. I will tell you that.
He does have abs.
He does have abs.
Shape for his age.
He's in good shape for any age. I'm sorry. He's in good shape for any age. We probably look at him with a little bit different lens, though, I would imagine.
Yes, but it's quite the same appeal for me.
Probably it's a little bit different. But he did say, animals defend themselves with their hooves and claws. Plants defend themselves with their toxins.
With phytochemicals.
And absolutely. And it again makes sense. It makes sense that they make us sick. When I tell patients that their gout is likely from their vegetables, they look at me like I've grown a second head. I had hamburgers this week. It's my gout. No, it's not.
Yeah. I've got mates who are going through that right now. And I'll say to them, it's not the meat. It's the alcohol, or it's the grain, or it's the vegetables.
Yep.
And no.
Second head.
Says it's the meat. Oh, okay.
Well, okay.
You do what you want to do. But yeah. Oh, no, it's not. Saladino is an interesting one because, and you may find this a bit controversial, but in the writing of my book, I went at it from a hardcore carnivore perspective to start with. But the more I looked into human physiology, and I wanted to write the book from the perspective of unpacking the hard science. So I wanted to steer clear of epidemiology completely. And I wanted to unpack the hard science of how our digestive system is made up and functions. And according to that, like what our essential nutrients are, and then find the harmony between the two. Like, what do we need? What does our system handle best? Happy days, because then you have the fundamental human diet.
Yes.
But the more I looked into that, and then I looked into some of the paleoanthropology as well, Dr. Mika Ben-Dor and his team out of the University of Tel Aviv, love their stuff. But I had to reconsider the carnivore look and step back and go, you know what, like we're not obligate carnivores.
No.
Most people don't appreciate that the term carnivore is an umbrella. It's not a singular thing. Like everyone has in their head carnivore meat, end of story.
Yes. Yep.
Not necessarily the case. There's 4 classes of carnivore. And obligate carnivore is the only class that has to have 100% meat for their nutrition because they don't have the digestive enzymes to get nutrition from anything else, plants or fungi. And then as you step down, you get hypercarnivore, which is where humans sit according to our trophic levels. which means we have the digestive flexibility to include some plants and fungi up to 30% of our intake.
Sure.
Now, that, I believe, was a survival mechanism, a built-in safeguard for starvation avoidance, because hunting is hard business. It's not easy.
Absolutely.
And it's not always successful. Even the most successful predators today, lions, tigers, so on and so forth, are not successful every time they hunt. And we needed to then be able to lean into something else.
A secondary food source.
So, yeah, we
that's
have
why we have different physiologic
exactly.
pathways, of course.
Exactly. It's supplemental. It's not essential. So I think I've had to reconsider my stance on Saladino from that perspective. I disagree with him vehemently that carbohydrates are essential.
Right.
I don't think that we have to eat fruit. I think we can. And I think that Dr. Lustig has probably got the most apt description of fruit that I've come across. And it's how I use fruit. And his description was, fruit is nature's candy. They treat it as such.
Absolutely.
Occasional treat. Beautiful. And I do. I enjoy
it is.
Some fruit on the weekend, or if I've really got a hankering for something sweet, where I used to default to ice cream. And ice cream is my Achilles heel. Like, if there's a tub of ice cream in the house, I'm going to eat it, and I'm going to eat it all in a single sitting.
The entire thing.
The entire thing. There's a South African comedian, and the analogy will probably be lost if I try to do it directly, but he has a skit where he talks about chocolate. And if he's talking about the difference in how different people treat chocolate. And you get some people who can go buy a bar of chocolate and then they'll just break 2 pieces off and enjoy the 2 pieces and then put the rest of the bar away and ignore it. And off they'll go to bed. And he says for him, that thing's like having a cockroach or a rat in the house. It must die, and it must die tonight.
100%.
That's me with ice cream. Like, if the ice cream's in the house and I know it's there, it must die. Like, I know it's there and it must be finished, and it's going to be finished now. It won't even touch sides.
And it's so you're getting things. I've never had ice cream because when I'd never eaten, like, because I was a vegan.
Yeah.
So I'd had like a Dole Whip. It wasn't like I didn't have that. And then I became carnivore, so I've never had ice cream. I did, like, literally today saw a recipe, and I tried to limit my cheese because cheese is really pro-inflammatory.
Yeah.
The thing about Paul Saladino, he's super smart, but it's also a difficult thing. I think this goes back to what you were saying earlier. When you have a discussion with somebody and you try to change your mind, because he was in carnivore for like the first 3 months when I was carnivore. And then all of a sudden he was like, now I'm eating watermelon. I'm like, what has happened? This is the person who, wait, he just told me why all these things are bad. I'm not understanding this. And it made no sense because everything that he said about carnivore made sense. And all of a sudden he's like, no, we're going to do it this way. And so I actually felt a tiny bit betrayed. He didn't know who I am, clearly. Actually, we had a really lovely encounter on Twitter when he was really, really kind when I entered the carnivore community. And he was a super nice guy. He's very, very kind and very friendly. But I don't think I don't think carbohydrates. In fact, I would argue that they are absolutely non-essential.
Correct.
But I also think just because we can eat something, it doesn't mean we should necessarily, although if your body's built for it, it's certainly not a bad idea. But that's just like saying to somebody who's allergic to strawberries, well, but you can eat them. Well, of course they can. They're just going to get quite sick from it.
Yes.
So can and should, I think, are very different things. And I think Michaela Peterson, Jordan Peterson's daughter, who is controversial, of course, controversial figure,
I think she's
is a good
example.
She's brilliant, but she's a very controversial figure because, I think by the nature of her father being controversial, she's controversial. But there is no doubt that she had crippling rheumatoid arthritis. And I think she had a variety of other things as well.
Yeah.
multiple surgeries, infertile by her own admission. And then I don't know exactly her steps of figuring it out, but literally all she eats is ground beef and steak. And she's on no meds. And especially, I think she was talking about to the point where she had actually healed so much that had hardware removed from some of the things. Yeah. But she was the one who actually convinced her father, after he had gone through his withdrawals and things. He was having like steak and he said like spinach salad. And he was still not feeling well. And she's like, you've got to stop eating spinach. He's like, how can a cup full of spinach?
Yeah.
Literally a cup full of spinach. And she's like, you got to do it. And he said it was miraculous. It makes no sense that a cup full of spinach should do that. But if you're poking at your immune system with that one thing, to me, I know I love cheese, but it's not great for me. So I try to modulate that. The same with dairy products. I find that if I stick to ground beef and eggs, and because I've turned into a very, very, very bad Jew, bacon. I love bacon.
But bacon and eggs are the best of friends. Like, they have to go together. It's just a thing.
Crispy bacon? Dang. Crispy bacon is like the best in the world. But those things are so wonderful. And I wish I had known about it in med school or high school, because I think so much, it's the ketones. It's got to be the ketones and the cholesterol. To the point where I actually some days choose not to eat when I come home, because my brain gets so awake after I have a very lovely cholesterol-laden breakfast, because my brain gets all awake. And so if I want to go to sleep, I literally cannot eat those foods when I come home. I have to switch my dinner time, my one meal after. Yeah, because it really does make your brain really quite awake. It'd be interesting to see if my grades would have improved. I wasn't the world's greatest student, still made it through med school, but still wasn't the world's greatest student. But if only I had discovered bacon.
Well, there we go. Bacon is a superfood. There's I cannot remember the name of the show. I want to say it was Wife Swap or something like that. It was some American reality TV show where families would swap the moms and do like a few weeks. Like, mom from family A would go and live with family B for a few weeks, and vice versa. And there's a skit where this little boy, and I want to say he's from like the South somewhere, like redneck country, by his accent. And he's got this woman who comes in who's the typical sort of contemporary health fanatic. And she's trying to like clean up their eating, and she tries to get rid of the bacon. The meltdown this kid has is spectacular. And the punchline is, bacon's good for me. That has stuck with me for years.
And it's such a wonderful, I have the problem of trying to find the bacon though that doesn't have, there's always so much stuff. And that is a difficult thing. You do, that's so much stuff on it.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunately the reality of the food system over there. Here in the UK, we're quite fortunate in that the bacon may have some salt and maybe a preservative, but it's not cured with sugar and the other additives and flavor enhancers and stuff like that. So our bacon is relatively clean.
And Kerry Kelly, who of course on Twitter, he's a chef. His book, his cookbook is wonderful, a carnivore cookbook. He contends that honestly the sugar burns off and it really isn't something that affects you. But
maybe
I don't know if it all does, honestly, because to me it's sweet. And I mean,
I was just thinking that if it tastes sweeter, then obviously some of the sugar has survived the cooking process.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. A podcast I did a few weeks ago, we were chatting about the fact. Have you had any of the carnivore bars? The company carnivore
No,
bar
no, I'm familiar with them, but I've not had the pleasure of trying any.
are quite expensive, but it is not something it's not like, okay, you're going to have a bar for a sitting. Nobody eats. It's just not one of those foods that you would do. It's a couple of bites. You're like, oh, that's excellent. I'm quite good. They have a couple different flavors, but they're really clean. But their plain one, their traditional one, still tastes sweet to me. And it's very interesting. And I think it has to do with sort of the way that the heme is in it. Because, with blood, if you think about blood, the bars are amazing, but they are like $24 a bar, US. And
Yeah,
I don't know what the translation is
it's
for
no,
US.
that's expensive.
It is expensive, and it may last you 4 snacks, but that is an expensive snack.
Yeah.
But it's some of the cleanest, and the people at the company are lovely. I've bought a few times from them. They're lovely, but
So
I struggle because when I travel, it's very hard to find clean food. Very, very hard.
is the carnivore bar similar to pemmican?
It is. Yeah, and I am not a good chef. I've seen a couple of different recipes. I've tried to reproduce them. I don't have the tools or the knowledge, and it just is not right. The limits of my cooking are now I can make bacon, I can make eggs, and I can do broth. And I've tried to make carnivore bread a few times with like the egg bread.
Yeah.
And it always looks so lovely and fluffy when people make it online. And mine, it's very much like kind of this and very similar, and it's unpleasant.
Yeah,
it
tastes like omelet, and you're just like, it's not what I was going
it's
for.
not. No, I've heard that if you add panko to it, it actually makes it more bread tasting. But I'm a sourdough girl,
Yeah,
and there's nothing like sourdough.
no.
I am very excited though because in September, so every 2 years, my dear friends that we're in Bermuda together. One lives in Birmingham now. One is still in Bermuda. She's Jamaican but lives in Bermuda. We meet up and we do a vacation. And so we're meeting in Copenhagen because we're going on a Northern Lights cruise.
All right.
I have heard that the bread in Europe, because it has so few additives and preservatives, and the wheat is grown differently. I've heard that it is potentially safe even for people who,
Well,
like me, don't
yes
do well
and
with
no,
it.
because David Unwin would
Yes, he would probably say
disagree
no.
that it's
Yeah,
safe.
he would disagree. Yes.
But it's certainly a lesser evil than the bread that you're getting in the States. And I've heard that echoed by a few people who have had the experience of eating American bread and then coming across to Europe and eating any sort of wheat product in Europe, pasta, bread, whatever. There's a remarkable difference between the two, but it's still going to be heavy glycemic load, and it's still going to potentially lead to problems, particularly if consumed often.
Yeah, I will tell you, it's very interesting. I said, oh, Copenhagen, very cool. Northern Lights, cool. I'm going to have sourdough. And I've literally we don't have a hotel room yet in Copenhagen. We haven't identified one. I'm like, but I have found the bakery that like I'm going there. I don't know where we're going to sleep, but that is where I'm going. And that is where I'm going. But those are you know what? That's okay. And now you've talked about ice cream. Like, I should try ice cream, but I'm not going to because it's just going to make me sick.
If you're anything like me, it's a slippery slope. That stuff.
It is.
Crack.
Maybe I'll just avoid it then.
Yeah.
Keep to my tea.
Dr. Kiltz has some good recipes for homemade ice cream where you're making it with heavy cream and a couple of egg yolks and maybe a bit of vanilla. And you, if you are willing to use
adding allulose,
if you want to invest in the machinery, you can make healthy, quote unquote, ice cream at home whole food, like non-adulterated ice cream, and then have that as a treat once in a while. Absolutely no issue with that. But the store-bought stuff, like my weakness is like the tubs of Ben and Jerry's or tubs of Haagen-Dazs. Like that stuff it may as well be crack cocaine because I can't put the stuff down.
Well, what is it? Your nucleus accumbens. I mean, it is crack. It'll light up.
The dopamine feedback loops that I've developed eating that stuff over the years are well and they're like motorways. They're so wide and ready. Like one little taste and like, boom, that lights up.
I'll be sitting down and there's no patch that you can put on to quit.
Yeah, my wife is like, you're a glutton, and I was like, for this stuff, you're 100%.
Is she a carnivore? Is she a carnivore as well?
Not intentionally, but I'm very pleased that over time she has moved more in that direction. Because she still looks at me like I've got 3 heads and I'm a complete weirdo on the whole metabolic health thing. Like there's still an air of like, I'm not too sure about what you're on about. And it's good for me because she keeps me honest and grounded about stuff. But she has started to eat certainly more whole foods, which is fantastic.
Wonderful.
And a lot more meat heavy, which is awesome. And I'm glad to see it. But yes, so she's not carnivore yet, but she's a lot closer than what she was a few years back.
And you said you've been 8 years, so 2018. So, and you have, well, a daughter that's older than that. So this was, you were married when this happened already. That's an interesting thing when one is and one isn't. That must be very
difficult to negotiate.
Very difficult to negotiate. I bet your refrigerator is very odd.
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, we have 2.
Oh.
So we've got the main big one, which just isn't big enough for everything, and then we've got a smaller second one. And I tend to pack all my meat in the smaller second one.
It's one of my nurse practitioners at work. He's a newly converted carnivore. He's wonderful. He just bought one for his garage because he bought a quarter of a cow. And he goes, it's my cow fridge. Because I bought a fridge for my cow. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, and I think he did it like around his anniversary, but that's what he called it. It's my cow fridge. He goes, because otherwise there was no room.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no room for it. Knows a local butcher, and he ordered a quarter of a cow. He ordered it, I think, 6 months in advance. Yeah. And he said, everyone kind of gets the equal things. And then they've got some prized organs and things that they divvy up. And so like some of the organ meats they got as organ meats, and some of them they got as grinds. And so he's very, very excited with like the sausages and things. And he is funny. We have a shared refrigerator in one of the little like physician lounges, and he and we have butter in there. And we're like, if you touch our butter, because we have those like terribly expensive, like beautifully flaky salt butter that we import.
Like the Rolls Royce of butter.
Absolutely. Yeah. And because at work, they don't have a cream at work, they have creamer. So it's like the artificial like seed oils. And so we bring butter. And we're like, if anyone touches our butter, like if people are like, honestly, no one's going to touch your butter. We're good. Nobody's going to touch your butter. Just like, because we have like warning signs all over it. We have like little shelf for the butter. Oh, yeah, it's wonderful.
Nice.
I actually have it in my tea right now.
Before we finish off,
sir,
you do a lot of public speaking, which I quite admire. How did you get into that?
Completely by accident, honestly. In that I had been a medical speaker for decades, like science conferences, medical conferences, EMS conferences, and these things don't pay really anything except if you're like one of the superstar speakers. And I had just transitioned into a carnivore. I was doing some LinkedIn stuff, but nothing serious. And I got a random DM on LinkedIn. Hey, this is so and so. We're interested in getting a speaker and we desperately need him for this weekend. We see you live in Orlando. Can you give me a call? I'm like, what kind of EMS conferences this weekend? Because I'm like, I know where all the EMS conferences are. So I called him and he said, no, it's like an air conditioning something or other. And I'm like, are you sure? Is there another Amy Gutman? He's like, no. He goes, you're a speaker, right? You're a doctor. And he goes, can you do like, I don't know, like leadership or like biology? It's just like, I need an executive talk and somebody dropped out and I need someone to speak for an hour and I'll give you $5,000. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What do you mean you're going to give me $5,000? To do what? What kind of conference is this? And do you know what I look like? I'm like, figuring like OnlyFans or something like that. He goes, no, that's what physicians earn for. Physicians absolutely don't earn that for conferences. I've never earned that for a conference. And as it turned out, I couldn't get anyone to cover my shift, but I found someone to speak for him. I found one of my colleagues. I'm like, because he had done some talks. I'm like, because he's a church speaker. I'm like, can you talk in like leadership, whatever? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, do you want $5,000? He goes, yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to say no to that.
No. And so the gentleman was so nice. And we ended up, I said, can you do me a favor? I said, at some point, call me back and tell me about this whole speaking thing because you're confusing me. And he was explaining to me that companies will hire people for events and things. They usually go through an agency. He goes, but they had a speaker drop out. So, well, gosh, I could do that. It'd be a lovely supplement. And maybe I won't have to work so many night shifts. And it sounded really easy, but like many things in life that sound really easy, it isn't, because the difference between somebody who's speaking at a medical conference, click, slide, that's a liver, that's a thing, here's a protocol, that's a drug. And a speaker is like the difference between you and your whole to New Zealand. It's a very different thing. In fact, so when I started with one kind of speaker group, learn how to be a speaker, I'm like, surely I know. And when I started having interaction, she's like, you can't even hold a conversation with somebody. She goes, you have to start doing podcasts because you have to learn how to talk to people. I think Martin actually said I could talk the hind legs off of a donkey. I said, you should have seen me last year.
That's a polite Scotsman he is.
He's very polite, as they do. But like my first podcast was one of the most painful things. If you go back and it's like, oh, tell us what you do. I'm an emergency physician.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understand you work night shifts. What's that like? It is busy.
Yeah.
And it was just, you could see the host just going, wow, this was a mistake. And I didn't know what to do. And they said, here's the thing. You can have a planned conversation for an hour or two, or you can just play off each other. But you have to be willing to go in crazy directions. And you have to be like really kind of like audacious. Sometimes you have to do things for shock value, but always never lie, and make sure if you have a statement or a fact that you either know what it is or say, I'm not sure, but. And that will help translate into a stage. The first time I was on a stage, literally as a speaker without a script in front of me, was my TED Talk.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I've watched
it. Was terrifying. Yeah. It was absolutely terrifying. It was my first time in heels as well, which was equally terrifying. That was a personal goal. I've never had
pleasure. And I don't think I ever will. But
so actually one of the people who helped teach me to walk in heels is one of my dear friends who happens to be a guy, but he was a drag queen at one point in his life. And he said I embarrassed him because I could only walk in the little kitten heels. And he's like, girl, I'm like, okay. But yeah, so learning how to vamp, learning how to figure out your audience, and the whole process of finding stages and events. and then pay to play and try to build a network and finding assistance, because I spend probably 4 to 6 hours every single day, even when working, trying to find events, trying to find conferences, returning emails, failing. I was so overwhelmed last week that I'm like, I can't look at LinkedIn one more minute. I can't, my bandwidth is, because things are falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
But there is an enormous joy in being hired by somebody for a deliverable and watching every single person in the room. You know, the light bulbs that you talk about?
Yeah.
Watching people in that room go, oh.
Yeah.
And maybe instead of that one person a week, maybe I reach 400 people. And it's not an ego thing, but remember that penance I was talking about, like all the patients for decades, that I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't a bad doctor. I was just that's what I thought I knew.
Yeah, you were doing the best according to what you knew at the time. Yeah.
Absolutely. But this is my penance. Now I go and I try to bring metabolic health to as wide of an audience as I can, and then use my experiences in executive leadership and go to those audiences. This morning, I spoke to a wonderful gentleman who's looking for sort of it's a more faith-based conference. And we talked about, the idea of metabolic health, but how being metabolically healthy is one of the sort of interesting things that can lead you to sort of a better spirituality. There's actually really quite good data on that, because it has to do with that mind-body connection.
Yeah.
And so those things are really interesting. And it's a very different take on it, but all science-based. And it's very applicable. Like you said, what did you think? It's Billy's Law? You said your engineer?
Yeah, well, Billy Basics is his.
Billy Basics.
Billy Basics.
Billy Basics. It is. If you can take again, stealing somebody else's words, it's a firefighter. Cholesterol. Cholesterol is when at the scene of a heart attack, because you don't blame the firefighter for the fire. Of course it goes there. It's trying to repair the vessels.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful, beautiful allegory that people paint a picture.
Yeah.
And it's hard to not think of cholesterol that way ever again. And so that's what I love to do as a public speaker. And I am hoping to be a little more successful in the larger paying jobs, because it'll let me do my passion projects, EMS and fire and police, and the nonprofits that really truly don't have any money, but are just as deserving as anyone else. So maybe a few less night shifts.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Good.
That would be lovely.
Well, I wish you every success in that, and I thoroughly enjoy your content, and I do follow you quite avidly. And the one encouragement I'd like to give you is that keep doing the podcasting, because the podcasting has such reach, and it's the thing I love about podcasting. It's like an immediate effort at a point in time, but it then keeps being playable, and keeps working in the background for you without you having to repeat that same effort. And that
builds that audience.
Knows how many people get to see you and get to hear your insights, and how many aha moments are being had in private around the world at the moment because of the podcasts you've been on. So please do continue doing that. It's fantastic work.
I love it. And again, thank you again, because I love your content on LinkedIn, and I love the science. I like anything that's science-based, because that really appeals to me. I think you should add a mitochondria, though, to your background. I think there's room for it.
There's an interesting reason why I don't.
Oh, okay.
So, Billy Basics, again, being the principle. if I go and talk to the average person in the street about mitochondria, I've lost them before the conversation even starts, because the average person, and perhaps the pendulum will swing and it'll become
Maybe,
more commonplace, but the average person doesn't have a cooking clue what mitochondria are or what they do.
but they
But if you
built the
talk to them
DNA.
about metabolic health,
Hmm.
they will have a rough idea that it has to do with metabolism. You've got a common foundation that you can start a conversation with. So
Sick.
I like to talk about metabolic health because I think that is the appropriate conceptualization
Yeah.
of mitochondria and their functioning and everything that sort of comes built upon that. I think that's the proper conceptualization for the layman.
And you know what? I agree. But it is one of those things that in my world, it's the mitochondria. In your world, it's the diet before exercise. But what the nice thing is about having podcasts or lovely, respectful conversations, like I can absolutely see your point. It's not my worldview, but sure, that makes
Yeah.
sense to me because it does make sense. And Billy sounds like a very smart person.
Billy's an incredibly smart person, but we won't tell him that too much because he'll get a big head.
Is he from Scotland too?
Well, I think he is. Yeah, I think he is. He lives up north now. I think he lives in Preston. But I think Mr. Bremner is originally from Scotland. So
That's a shame then.
I'll be sure to tell him tomorrow.
Well, I'm from Detroit, so I really shouldn't talk. So we're, there. But I do
The
think
background is to do
it's
with my
lovely.
startup. So it's biology and
Yeah.
then it's tech.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna meld the
But
two, not
it's
in the
really
way people think, but
it's a brain though. No, it looks like
yeah,
the
it's
brain.
circuitry.
If you look,
Yeah, circuitry,
I mean, that's really what a brain is. But I thank you again. This is absolutely lovely. You have been lovely and as lovely in person as you are on LinkedIn. So
No, thank you.
I maybe we've opened up some minds or people have some other questions today. So I look forward to it and I look forward to not being on LinkedIn tonight because I'm going to go to bed. So that's very
That's fine.
exciting.
Yeah, it's
You
10
should
past
as well.
11 here. I'm going to be going to bed shortly too.
There's a launch tonight though. So we were talking about space.
Oh,
So I'm going
nice.
to run the
Yeah.
launch. Yeah. I think we have one about 8 or 9 tonight. So you have a wonderful night and
Thank you,
give a
Amy.
kiss to your non-carnivore wife and your lovely children. And thank you for letting me participate. This has been absolutely lovely.
You're most welcome. You've been fantastic. Thank you very much for your time.
You have a great evening.
And you. Thanks, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share, help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.